you for giving up some Thank you for giving up some time on your Saturday morning to join us for this diversity session um, put on under the auspices of North Pacific Yearly Meeting. Um, let's see, how committee, no, Addressing Harm with Care Working Group under Peace and Social Concerns. So I get the attribution right. Um, I'm Theo Mace, she, her, South Seattle Friends meeting. We are, as you probably noticed, we're being recorded so that we can have our notes from the meeting. I'd like to begin the meeting with silent worship, but I want to indicate to you that then after that, we'll do introductions, brief introductions, go around to the people who are on the screen, and then I'm going to just make a few little remarks, just um, some things to set the framework, and open it up to the group to talk about the two queries that I sent out, and I'll repeat again as we move to that part of the of our session. So let's begin with a few moments of silent worship. Hey, again, good morning, friends. We'll start now with introductions. If you could say your name, your pronouns, your meeting, and maybe just very briefly what brings you to the session this morning. We'll have ample time to talk and respond to the queries later as well. As I said, Theo Mace, she, her, South Seattle Friends meeting. And then if you would at the end call on someone who hasn't been called on since it's really hard to do any kind of sequential thing on Zoom. Christina.
Good morning, Christina Bartleson, she, her from University Friends. I'm here in part because I'm a member of the working group that's putting on this series. I'm also here because I have two trans children. My oldest one, Tay, goes by they, them. My younger one, Piper, is she, her. Susan.
Susan Cousins, Eastside Friends Meeting. I'm also part of the working group on addressing harm with care, which Theo is actually under ministry and council. in the North Pacific Yearly Meeting hierarchy, as small as that hierarchy is. I'm here because I care deeply about these issues, but I do want to apologize to the group. I'm driving 2 hours this morning to go to a memorial service in Bellingham, and so I will be leaving you at about past. And I will pass to Bob Ward.
Thank you, Susan. My name is Bob Ward. I'm from the Corvallis, Oregon Friends Meeting. I am a trans man since 1957, and therefore, while I am he, him, I am also beyond pronouns. And I'm here because it matters deeply these days that younger trans people have support and also examples of people who've managed to have a future for a long time. Thank you. And I will call on Verna.
Good morning, friends. Verna Lilly, she, her from Tacoma Friends Meeting. I am a chaplain, community chaplain, and my particular leading is toward marginalized groups. So I serve homeless, immigrant, LGBT, those that are treated as less than for any reason. And so that's where my heart and my calling is. And that's enough about me. How about Diane Pasta?
Diane Pasta, University Friends Meeting, she, her, and ours. I believe that our work is radical inclusion, and this is part of that work for me. Dinah.
Hi, I'm Dinah Backrack, she, her, from Whidbey Island Friends Meeting. And I'm here for a variety of reasons. So I'm a longtime lesbian, and my partner, Miko Sorrell, some of you know, is gender fluid, better name for non-binary, and goes by they, them. And we're really struggling to bring pronouns into our meeting. It's not been part of the culture, and we're trying to bring it in. And it's not being that they're the only not cisgendered person. At any rate, I'm trying to figure out ways to educate our friends meeting to be more clearly welcoming of trans people. So delighted that this is happening. And I will call on Gail Sanford.
There we go. Gail Sanford, she, her, Multnomah Friends Meeting in Portland. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I'm here just for better understanding and how to be supportive to folks in our meeting. And I will choose Lorna.
Good morning, friends. I'm Lorna Stone, she, her, from South Seattle Friends Meeting, and I'm here because I really care about this issue. I will call on Carol Isaacson.
Hey, I'll make myself visible, although I'm still in my pajamas this morning. So I'm I'm here because I'm really glad that Theo is having this, and I have a transgender grandson, and so this issue is important to me. I may have to bow back out with my picture because I also have to put drops in this dog's eyes. So if you don't want to watch, okay. Thank you.
Oh, Carol,
Yeah.
can you call on someone?
Oh, I'm trying to see who hasn't been called. Emily, have you been called?
No, I haven't, but I can
Okay.
speak. Emily Meyerding, and I'm a member of Olympia Friends Meeting, but I attend the Lower Columbia worship group here on the Long Beach Peninsula, and she, her, and I'm very dedicated to all of the issues of marginalized people. In fact, my dissertation for my Master's of Education was problem-based learning for marginalized students. So let's see, who else hasn't been? Has Darlene? Darlene, please.
Gone. Oh, here I am. I'm Darlene Colburn. I'm from Eugene Friends Meeting. I'm surprised to see all of us oldsters here. I was hoping to see some of the younger generations here. So that surprises me. Mostly I'm attending to expose my and others' hidden agendas and prejudices. Like a lot of times we don't see things, and when we have groups or talks or whatever, that we can start looking at how we be in the world that may be demeaning to other people that we're not really aware of, that maybe that's the way we grew up and haven't been exposed yet. So I'm here to do that. I'm also here to challenge people to spread out our thinking. We're continuing to try to put old words to new ways of being. The dictionary adds at least 200 words every year, and I just challenge us to reach out and start finding new words for describing how we be in the world, because these old ones don't work.
Okay, I think that's everyone.
Has everybody gone?
We
Is
haven't
there
done
anyone?
Kepper. Kepper.
Kepper, sorry.
And Kepper's next.
Hi. Hi, I'm traveling and I'm on my cell phone, so I'm gonna turn my video my picture off just because I'm gonna put the cell phone down. It's hard to hold, and I don't think you want to look at the ceiling. But I'm Kepper Petzing. I'm from Multnomah Friends Meeting. I use they pronouns, and I think it's critically important that everybody have a spiritual community available to them. And so, particularly people who have been told that God disapproves of them, it's especially important to have a welcoming spiritual community. So, I think it's really important. I'm here because I think it's really important that there be a spiritual community available to LGBTQ people.
Okay, thank you. Well, so this session was billed as focusing on pronoun usage and on trans rights under the broader umbrella of LGBTQ concerns. And also there are queries, which we're going to focus on. But I want to say initially, caveat, in terms of trans rights, I'm certainly no expert, but I did provide some resources of organizations that are focusing on trans rights and defending trans rights. I noticed that in today's Seattle Times, there was a report about, Trump's order about transgender that he issued early in his administration, and the administration has backed out of deals that were made with school districts in the country, particularly relating to trans girls in athletics in various school districts. So there's obviously a lot of action in that area, and but I'm not really completely up to date. But if you look at if you look at the resources page that I sent out, um, there's definitely a lot going on, and Human Rights Watch, Lambda Legal, ACLU are trans. There's a trans legislation tracker, so there's a lot of resources to keep abreast of what's happening in that area. The final thing I want to say here is I highly recommend this book that I mentioned in the resources section called He, She, They by Skylar Baylor, a trans man. It covers a really wide range of issues, all related to trans in a very readable way. And although it does cover the complications as well. So, but as I point out, there are a number of resources like that out there. I chose that one, and I was very pleased with the kind of explanations that were provided. The book unfortunately doesn't really talk much about spirituality and trans people, but it is really helpful about the whole panorama of what's happening with trans people these days. Okay, I hope everyone has a copy of the queries.
I'm sorry, I don't have any of the pre-reading material.
Yes, I noticed that you were not on the original sign-up list, and I can definitely send
I
you.
can put them in the chat.
Oh, great. Okay.
And I did register, so.
Okay. I'm apologize if it didn't make its way to you, but if it didn't, we'll certainly send them out.
Yeah, same for me. I was late registering yesterday late, so if you could send me the resources and I'll look for the queries in the chat. Thanks.
Okay, Christina, you're gonna do that?
We can make sure that happens.
Okay. Anybody else who didn't get?
Can we get the queries in the chat at least?
Can you do that, Christina?
And if
I can
by any
read them
chance,
out. I'll read them out, and maybe Christina can put them in the chat. The queries are, first, what can help us to see that of God in everyone when we may not fully understand how they are moving through this world? What simple steps, number two, can we adopt to create welcoming spaces that facilitate everyone being able to work and worship together? And I guess the focus in that second query would relate to both local meetings and the broader North Pacific Yearly Meeting community. And I would like to open it up to you to talk about your experiences, your suggestions, your concerns around these queries and generally on these issues.
This is Kepper. I would like to speak to pronouns for a minute. And Theo, I appreciate so much everything that you do. It's always hard to say a criticism, but with the people that I'm with, it's very important that pronouns always be optional. And when we're told, like, please share your name and your pronouns, then that seems very directive. And it's a lot more helpful to say, please share your names and pronouns if you wish. And again, the people that I'm with, they find the most welcoming and supportive groups to be groups that roughly about half of people share their pronouns and half don't. And I think the feeling has gotten out that if you want to support trans people, then you must share pronouns and you must get everybody to share pronouns. But it's really important that pronouns be welcomed. As Dinah spoke about, I was really sad to hear that, Dinah. And I know it's been a struggle for me at Multnomah Meeting with the they. I've been using they for 10 years, so you would think people could get used to it after 10 years. But on the other hand, I think it's really important that we understand that for many people, gender is a journey and people are changing and moving through that journey. And so when we insist that people share pronouns, some cisgender people are uncomfortable with the whole idea, which is fine. But some transgender people are in motion and don't like to be put on the spot to say what their pronouns are today. Sometimes people would rather float with that. And I think that's just really important for us to understand that that sort of insisting on pronouns impacts trans people as much as cis people, and that we stay more sensitive to that, that we want to support people in the pronouns that they choose, and we want to support people who are moving around in the whole gender journey.
Thank you, Kepper. I appreciate that. And I debated about that issue. I guess in the book I talked about the fellow is adamant about sharing pronouns because it's the way that people can know how to interact with someone. But in our own meeting, South Seattle Friends, I know we are asked to share pronouns if we want to, and some people do and some people don't. So anyway, just to say, happy to follow your guidance on that.
Okay, and also what you bring up too is that none of these communities are single-minded. You know,
You're
we
right.
expect like Black people, well, how do Black people want this? You know, how do
Exactly.
trans people want that? So of course you'll run into different opinions. So I'm just sharing
Sure.
my trans community, how we feel.
Yep. Thank you. And thank you. Bob?
First of all, friends breaks my mind deeply. In fact, I had just put in the chat that in the Willamette Valley LGBTQ chorus, that's actually an issue. Please don't pin me down. I'm not speaking for myself, but people, especially younger people, please don't pin me down. I yesterday asked someone what they preferred to be called, and she said right now she, but don't quote me on that. And that's so when I saw the topic today, a bit of my heart fluttered sadly because I think, no, I sense that many of the people under 30 in particular have, I don't want to diminish the importance of how I see their how I respect their identity, but the issues are far more about the journey, how I get respect for where I am on that journey, how I get acceptance for the fact that today I might be dressed as the tooth fairy and tomorrow I may be dressed as a stockbroker, and and it's a bit of a resentment that the pronoun they seems to imply a herd or a bunch of people, and so I hope that we can catch up with where the younger folks are in their journeys and what they need. The other thing is that I did ask somebody, would it help if we broke all the rules and used they as a singular pronoun, as they is, they goes, they wants? They said, well, that would actually help a lot because then I would know you weren't talking about me as part of a herd or the group in general. I know you were actually talking about me. And I think it fits with what we heard from the young friends at the Willamette Quarterly meeting, the young adult friends, the ones in the 20 to 30 age range, which was nothing about us without us. And that was a really clarion communication from the group that focused on what Willamette Quarterly can become or should become in relation to young friends and young adult friends. I just, to add one personal statement, when I introduced myself, I said beyond pronouns. The other thing I wanted to mention that may come up more in the second query is over the course of what's now almost 70 years of being trans, one of the earliest lessons I was helped to learn, and one of the ones that has helped me the most, is there's a difference between hurt and harm. And that's not for other people to be conscious of. That's for me to know in myself that things hurt. But am I harmed? And I think one of the ways that I've been working with some of the younger, listening with some of the younger trans people has been, what can help inside so that hurt doesn't grow into harm, and how to communicate back out to people that the remark was hurtful, but it's not about me, didn't get me, and please don't try again. So there we go.
Thank you.
I worked for a global company for almost 20 years, and I kind of appreciated sometimes when people would put their pronouns when they had these, 17-letter first names with 2 vowels, and I had no idea who they were. But then I spoke with one of those people, and they said they resisted putting their pronouns into their signature because so often it made them feel like somehow they lost status when they were revealed to be a woman instead of being a man. And that can be a real consideration for some people. But I do think that pronouns are important, and misusing them even kind of accidentally, as many people will do, is a kind of a microaggression. They pile up, and I'm very often taken to be a man when because look at how I look, and I don't mind getting male privilege, but then they want it back. So it's a difficult thing to negotiate.
Well, continuing to talk about pronouns, I just wanted to say one thing, and that is, first of all, the majority of the world's languages do not have 2 gendered pronouns, such as he and she. I think 57% of the world's languages just have a single pronoun. I first I was trying to learn Finnish, and Finnish just has 1 pronoun. And then I looked it up, Mandarin and Turkish. And anyway, many languages do not have the gendered pronouns. And also language evolves. English used to have the familiar form of you being thee and thou, and that faded away. And I'm just thinking that maybe he and she will fade away, and English will move into they. I don't know. Languages evolve and move.
This is Verna. One thing that I feel very aware of is how often words and attitudes around words are used as instruments of division. And when Kepper was talking about being welcoming, that was where my mind and heart went. I've heard about divisions between the rest of the LGBT community and trans because some people feel like they're getting more attention than they should, and what about us? And pronouns get mixed in with that, and I don't want to be divided against my fellow human beings. I really, really don't. And I want my words and my actions to be welcoming. And my own personal initial encounters with using pronouns had to do with this thing of please don't tell me I have to do this, because that does feel compulsory. But when I had conversations with trans friends, 2 of them that I'm close to, they gave me a step to the side perspective on that made me feel like I wanted to share my pronouns because I cared about them and I wanted them to feel welcome and didn't want to make it about me. And if we make it about us, not me as individuals, I think that helps us be more welcoming and helps guard against that intentional division that we're facing in society right now.
one of the things that has occurred to me about the way we identify ourselves at meeting after when we go around and introduce ourselves is that it almost becomes rote. And I think that's not the intention of identifying pronouns, whether people choose to say pronouns or not. If we don't pay, it's sort of like the land acknowledgement. We have to pay so much attention to this issue rather than just saying the words.
Go ahead, Dinah.
It's wonderful. It's just what I needed to hear. A lot of these different perspectives and experiences people are having with pronouns, and what other trans people have shared, and at different ages and just stages, all of that. And it's complicated. That's what I get too. And it was helpful to hear that, I think Kepper was saying, and, after quite a while, that it's like maybe half of the people share their pronouns and half don't. And people who don't for a variety of reasons, and accepting that, I have felt like that's not okay. I have been on the side of, it's really important for people to understand and I do think that a lot of it is a lack of education on the part of cisgendered people. And I've thought of, I'm thinking about offering a book study for the meeting on a book for cisgendered people. I mean, since my partner's the only one who isn't, I think if, and I don't know whether they would want to be there and then be the one educating the cisgendered people, which is problematic. But I think also, like in the anti-racist movement, white people educating each other, getting together in groups where it feels more safe to talk about your internalized racism, etc. And I think that would open things up for people to talk about why they feel uncomfortable saying their pronouns and to hear different perspectives. So I'm thinking of that as a way, because it is the pronouns just the tip of the iceberg of people understanding. Of course, using pronouns is very difficult. Using they them pronouns is very difficult for a lot of folks, and therefore there's the misgendering. And one thing, as a partner of someone, I've struggled with that all the time. I still misgender them, but I've gotten much better about it, and I teach other people. I interrupt other cisgender people when they do that, and I also say, don't apologize. You just make it so much more difficult if, when you realize you use the wrong pronoun, just correct it and move on. It's not, you don't have to feel ashamed. We all are. It's very difficult to shift this automatic pattern. So that's a piece of what I learned and learning. So yeah, I think I just very much appreciate hearing different sides of it. And I hadn't heard that there are trans people who are uncomfortable with being asked to use their pronouns. I had not heard that. Makes sense. And that some are, yeah, that being pinned down, and yeah. So thank you. I'll keep listening.
I just really want to add that I appreciate Kepper and Bob's remarks about not getting pinned down and not, that younger people, because that's my experience with a member of my family now, and so often the family members will just be so curious, and so I need to know what's going on, where are you, what do you want me to do? And they just don't want to say. So that makes so much sense to me. Thank you.
I work at a very large early learning center that has 5 preschool classrooms and 2 kindergarten classrooms. And it is so lovely to see the children that young, ages 3 to 6, and how they treat one another, how anyone that wants to come to school in a flouncy skirt can come to school in a flouncy skirt. Anyone can choose the name that they want to be called. Um, I'm not in the classroom, so I don't know pronouns as much, but I also heard one kid explaining to the other kid, one child was having trouble remembering what someone's pronouns were, and this 4-year-old said, just call them by their name. And it was such a like, silly, this is all you have to do is use their name. And it was like 3-year-old to 4-year-old, and it was so celebratory and so lovely. And yeah, and I appreciate how flexible they they still are.
That reminds me of two things. Kate Bornstein talking about having a small child asking her, are you a boy or a girl? And she would answer yes. And the other was a memory from quite a while ago now, but when my son Michael did something at school, and I happened to be home and got the call that someone was supposed to come in and collect him. So I went there, and he was sitting outside the principal's office, and the principal said, "Oh, I thought Michael's mother was coming," and Michael piped up and said, "Oh, this is my other mother." So that was and that was like 1998, so it was acceptable, but on the border. So that was.
I have a couple of things that come up for me. I choose to to uh, use he, her, the regular pronouns, and it's really hard for me, even though as a hippie and an accepting person, and that I accept you and your relationships and however you present yourself. I totally I accept you. And as I learn about my own prejudices and wipe them clean, it opens the door for me to be with you. And but I make my own choices, and my own choices are pretty the old standards. So for me, I have a need to have that be accepted, that I'm not wrong because that's what I choose. But that's the way that it's really hard for me to talk to somebody as a they when there's a single person. That's just really challenges me. So what I'm saying here is I think it's a two-way street, and that as we educate ourselves, that we know that it's both ways, and that those of us that are either uninformed or ignorant, or those prejudices need to be exposed so that we can all deal with them. And with that, it's a lot of ease. Like, let's be easy with each other as we make our way through this transition in our evolution. And I also have a concrete example of welcoming. We at Eugene Friends Meeting had a welcoming remodel of our restrooms, and we physically in our meeting house, rebuilt them so that they're single-use restrooms. And we called it the welcoming remodel. And I'm really happy to have been a part of that, and also to that now when people come to the meeting house, that's not an issue for them. And I've had some feedback from younger people that they just really appreciate that. They don't have to choose or not choose, like if you're a woman going into a men's restroom, is that okay or not? Sort of thing. It lays down those issues. You don't have to step into it. So I think accepting choices, and even if we choose the old way, one of the reasons I do it, as I said earlier, is I just want to encourage people to evolve our language. We need to figure out new ways to talk with and about and for each other. So that's what I have to share right now.
I volunteered at the HRC annual fundraising dinner in Seattle, and they had two restrooms, and they were both labeled gender neutral restroom. And after I investigated both of them, I went back upstairs to where the volunteers were having dinner, and I said to the women present that the gender neutral bathroom on the left is the one that has the urinals.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I've been thinking about in light of these queries are things that we could do at South Seattle Friends to make our meeting more welcoming. We, I think, had an attender some years ago who basically went through transition during the course of the time that she attended our meeting. And it was very interesting for our meeting to sort of participate in that. Unfortunately, that person doesn't attend meeting anymore, not for reasons about the transition, but because of the kind of faith community she wanted to belong to. But so but that doesn't in it. So I'm thinking about now, and we meet in a rental facility. Well, not a rental facility, it's a bad way to put it. We meet in a senior center where we rent space, and they control the bathrooms. We could talk with them about that. About gender neutral bathrooms. That would be one thing we could do. I've thought we have a sign that we put out when we're going to begin our meeting. It's out on the road to point out that there's a Quaker meeting going to take place. And I thought maybe we could put the flag, the inclusive flag that LGBTQ plus somehow on our signs so that it would indicate that we're welcoming. But I wonder if others have other ideas about how local meetings could make meeting more welcoming. I know usage of pronouns is of course important, but the person has to get to the meeting first. And I just curious if anyone has any ideas about that.
This is Kepper. I am traveling in Arizona, and I went to see if I could go to Flagstaff meeting tomorrow morning. And so I went to their website, and they have the conjoined flag, the LGBTQ flag, on their website, and that did make me feel welcome. I do want to caution people, though, about putting that on your website if your meeting actually isn't. So, that if I saw that and came to meeting and then found that people couldn't deal with the they pronoun, that would be hurtful, not harmful. Thank you, Bob. I really appreciated that, but it would be hurtful. That's one piece. I want to ask about South Seattle Friends meeting. while you're in meeting, are any restrooms, solely going to be used by people at the meeting during the meeting time? In which case, you can put a sign over the restroom sign.
Yeah, we could do that. There is, and there is, in addition, there is one sort of open unmarked bathroom that people could use if they wanted to, but that's a good suggestion.
Yeah, that's what we often do with NPYM. We just, make 8.5 by 11 signs and tape them over the restroom sign. Yeah, but it is helpful to identify which one has the urinal, because urinal often doesn't have stall doors. Well, some people don't want to see someone using a urinal without a stall door if they didn't know that was going to happen.
Bob?
Has everyone who has wanted to speak had a time? Just wanting to be sure. I want to touch on two scientific. I spend a fair amount of time trying to understand this whole evolving business of transness for a bizarre reason. One is that, of course, when my mother looked at me at age 9 and said, "You're not going to grow out of this, are you?" And my grandmother says I looked at her and roughly said, "Grow out of what?" um, But I came into this in the era where you had to fight for your life to persuade the world that I wasn't a female or a woman, a girl. And once having done that, I had to make an absolute dedicated, determined beeline to become as male as I could look and be as fast as possible, because any hesitancy would be seen as proof that I was wrong or lying or ill or all of the above. So it's been as much of a journey for me to actually try to get into the world of the fact of transgender, actually the word trans meaning actually beyond. That is the actual base meaning of the word trans, just beyond gender. And to actually then kind of talk about rewiring your inner structure to that, and also learning to be okay with the fact that I didn't have that choice. Binary was all there is or was. But what I do think is important is not to lose sight of the fear, the legitimate fear that many people have around places like locker rooms, bathrooms, isolated places, particularly the fear of trans women. And I do think we need to be very, very, very understanding of those people who translate that into what sounds almost like paranoia or anger, and to be prepared as much to deal with that as we are with the welcoming people. We have had an experience where the more welcoming we become, the more nervous two of our members become. And I think it's so easy just to think, well, get over it, honey. Well, it's not like that. We do need to be compassionate and ready. The other part that I wanted to mention is the research on the fact that there is such a thing as a trans brain. As scanning and science have gotten better, it's becoming clearer and clearer the trans brain is different. It also, not surprisingly, takes a lot longer to mature. Longer even than the female brain, certainly even longer than the male brain, and can be pushing 30 before the trans brain actually becomes crystallized in itself. So we are going to be welcoming to people in whatever state they arrive at our door, and then whatever stage they're at a month or a year later, and whatever happens in between, and not and fully accept that that is actually neurologically what's going on inside that person. There are a lot of, I won't go into the reasons why that's true, but the reason it's becoming so clear frankly, is until very recently the only way to examine a trans person's brain was through an autopsy, and there weren't too many of us willing to volunteer. But now that the scanning methods have become so much more sophisticated. So the other side of that, though, is neural, and I put it in the chat, is the evidence that as we age, the elders, and as we misgender people or can't remember what pronouns they are or who they are now, there is also real evidence that as we age, it feels like we're slower learning. What's actually happening is we're slower unlearning. And so I have started focusing on when I'm trying to learn something new on what is it I'm trying to unlearn. And in this trans issue, it's primarily that appearance.
Oh, we lost you, Bob. I don't know what happened, but your voice stopped transmitting. Shoot. I don't know what that's about.
Bob, speak again. I think I heard you say shoot.
Did you hear me
Oh, that
again?
was me.
No, we're hearing Christina's
Yes.
got thumbs up. Okay, that I'm focusing on what is it I'm trying to unlearn when I'm trying to learn something, and that's really been helpful. So if I'm trying to unlearn that somebody who looks like Emily is lockstep linked to the female sex and just work on that, then the fluidity starts to come back into my brain. That's not happens to be an issue I have, but I sure have a lot of other ones. Emily, you referred to grammar in the chat of grammatical rules around singular and plural and pronouns and things. And that's another one of working on unlearning that rule before we try to replace it. That's just all I'll say, but I do a lot of homework on this because it really helps sometimes trying to explain this to my peers and then to help younger trans people accept the fact that their elders, their parents and grandparents actually have a few handicaps here when it comes to trying to deal with this. Thank you.
Thank you.
This brings up the issue of learned behavior. Like we've been raised a certain way or have grown up a certain way, knowing certain things and having certain things work for us and other things don't, so we choose them. Hang on just a minute, let me get my thought here. In nonviolent communication, one of the focuses that we take is stepping out of learned ways of listening to people where we problem solve or try to fix or offer solutions and lay those ways of responding down and listen to what is needed from the person and what the person needs. So it switches the emphasis or emphasis from them or from us to them. And so it seems to me that in this situation, that what you're talking about unlearning, Bob, it has that kind of thing that we need to, we've been brought up to look at things this way or deal with things this way, is to see that we're doing that and start the process of laying that down and developing new ways of being. So I find that pretty interesting.
Friends, I noticed that we're approaching 11 o'clock, and I want to make sure that everybody who wants to has had an opportunity to chime in and say your piece. So if you haven't and you want to, please let us know.
I already have spoken, but I think everybody who has wanted to, everybody has shared. I just, again, appreciate being able to see this from many different perspectives. And that's being my experience of, so the notion of being welcoming is a two-way street, and being accepting of the many reasons why it's people are on whatever journey they're on that may not include feeling comfortable sharing their pronouns, and also that people for whom having pronouns shared is truly important as a sign of awareness and welcoming. That both exist, as well as we talked about that some trans people also don't want to be put in a box, which is some of what I've heard cis people say. They don't want to have to say their pronouns. I really appreciate all this. And I too wonder, what else can we do to be welcoming in a visible way beyond what we have on our websites? And I think someone from a meeting said that having something on, the table when people come in and sign in and whatever they do, that has something about trans rights, or maybe just a welcome statement there, the flag, something like that would be maybe a step, because attenders often, that's their first connection with the meeting.
Mhm. That's a good suggestion. Well, friends, we're at 11 o'clock, and I think at this point we should move into closing silence. And again, I appreciate everyone's contribution. And I think I saw in the chat, we'll be sending out the two documents, the resources, etc., so that if you haven't gotten them, hopefully you will when we send them out again. So let us move into silent worship.
I am reminded of the phrase, I see you. I think that each of us want to be seen for who we are, and that individual characteristic is part of what we're trying to do for everyone. I see you.
Thank you so much, friends, again for participating, and go in peace.
Does anyone want to save the chat who doesn't know how to do that?
I did